And welcome once again to another episode of the HoriZone Roundtable. We took a week off, but we're back. So, welcome. I'm Bob McDonald. You can find me on Twitter at Bob McDonald. And as always, I'm joined by Jimmy Lemke.
Hello, everybody. I
And
also am petting my dog at the moment. His name is Apollo. He's pretty
I,
he's pretty happy.
I'm currently witnessing my two dogs playing tug of war. So it's gonna be a canine filled episode today. I have this weird feeling. And Jimmy is over at PantherU.com and at PantherU on Twitter. Hey, we got a lot of stuff to get over. I mean, the regular season is over. We're getting ready for Motor City Madness next weekend, and a lot of different things going on. But first, I would like to start with kind of a personal note. For those of you who do follow me, many of you do know, I was the Cleveland State columnist over at More Than a Fan Cleveland. And a couple weeks ago, that site kind of went dark a little bit, and it's under new management now. So looks like they're going to be rebranding and trying some new things. And I kind of took that opportunity to part ways with the site. And with that said, I'm taking my talents elsewhere. As it were. I'm going to be over at Campus Press Box. The Cleveland State column is starting back up on this Friday on March 4th, I believe that is. So be sure to check that out. And hey, as will I. It's I think the overriding theme is close your eyes, Cleveland State fans. It will all be over soon. Yes, and also, as part of that, we're definitely ramping up we're definitely ramping up the college basketball on Campus Press Box. Along with myself, we're bringing on we brought on a few new writers. One of them being Carrick Jones. One of our previous guests. He's going to be he's debuting his column this week. So, feel free to visit campuspressbox.com. Bob.McDonald at campuspressbox.com. If you are interested in writing, we're looking to branch out to all mid majors. And it's definitely going to be something worth looking at.
Sounds good,
So,
man. I'm glad.
yes. So enough of my personal crap. Let's get into it, man. The seedings pretty much got all set on Friday. Basically, the first 6 seeds were all pretty much cleared out by 1 through 6 were all pretty much cleared out by the end of the night. And the only things that were in question were Sunday's games. When the only surprisingly enough, the only 2 seeds that were left that needed to be sorted out were 9 and 10. Jimmy, I'd like to thank you and on behalf of Wisconsin Milwaukee for beating UIC handily.
Yeah.
You guys made me nervous for stretches of that game. But I see I see the Panthers came through finished strong, and UIC is now the 10th seed. So by virtue of that, Cleveland State doesn't finish last in the conference.
They were actually a tough game tonight. It was our guys kind of came out, and you could tell that they were kind of enjoying the whole senior day. JJ Panoski came out and scored the first 10 points of the game, and then they kind of it was basically just a chuck fest. Like they were not trying at all, and then all of a sudden it was 10 minutes left in the first half, and they weren't pulling away, and they're like, "Wait, what's going on here?" And they ended up it ended up being a close game at halftime, and it wasn't until I want to say about 10 minutes left in the game when the Panthers started pulling away, and by the time it was about 5 minutes left, they were up by 20, and it was on to the obviously UIC kept trying, and Jeter had pretty much emptied out his bench by 4 minutes left. So they clawed back and made it about a 13-point game. But it was pretty hairy there for a while. I think UIC's got some talented players. Dikembe Dixon, not quite he wasn't quite the player I was expecting in person. It was the first time I've seen him in person. I've seen him play on ESPN3 several times. I was expecting a different feel during the game. He seems more athletic in person, but man, that guy gets some calls that I just wasn't expecting him to get. He gets kind of the star. It felt like he got a bit of the star treatment today, which was kind of surprising, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
We ended up winning the game.
So with UIC, and I'm glad you brought that up. The way that they played today, on Sunday, for the Milwaukee game.
Yes.
They're gonna be they may be the 10 seed, but to me that's kind of deceptive, just because of the way they've been playing down especially this second half of the conference schedule. They've played a lot of people really close, so yeah. I think they, even at 10, might be a pretty hard out.
They are not. It's not going to be easy. I mean, we got to remember that Wright State, who is going in as the 3, lost at UIC. So it's pretty incredible that even the 3-10 is not some giveaway. I will say that I do expect Wright State to light the world on fire and win by 30, or at least 15. But I'm not. It's not like any of the 10 teams are just easy games for anybody. I know that you like to get down on your own team, but I mean, we were up by 20 or so at Cleveland, and you guys almost came back and won. Cleveland's had a couple really close calls. They could have easily won 5 or 6 games in the conference. So
yeah,
I don't think anybody's easy.
I'm glad you brought that up as well, because on Saturday they only lost that game by 4. They made a pretty decent comeback against Wright State, and until otherwise dispelled, the curse of the Q lives on. When your own coach is calling games at Quicken Loans Arena a quote unquote glorified road game, might want to work on that.
Yeah, I understand the idea that that Cleveland State had, like, let's partner with the Q and have them market a bunch of games and everything, and maybe it could work. But the problem with Cleveland State basketball is that the Wolstein is just way too big. So you're going to go from 13,000 seat gym to a 17,000 seat gym, or 18,000.
20,000 seats.
20,000. So Gun Arena is 20,000 seats. It's just enormous.
Did you really just call it Gund Arena?
Yeah.
Podcast from 1997.
Hey man, old habits die hard. You did just call us Wisconsin, Milwaukee to start the podcast. So
that's true. I did. You see.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, I've been doing that throughout this entire podcast. Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Illinois, Chicago. I mean, Jesus, I'm just all over the map. I'm
pretty sure people listening to the podcast will know whether you mention Milwaukee, you're not talking about the Bucks, and when you say UIC, you're not talking about 3 letters in the alphabet, but an actual school.
That is true. So, but yeah, Cleveland, and keep in mind too, Cleveland State also was without DeMonte Flanagan. He spent the last 2 games out with a concussion.
Did that happen at our game?
No, it happened in practice. It happened in practice before the Northern Kentucky game, which, by the way, they won. So he ended up with a concussion, and he was out for the last 2 games. And man, when it rains, it pours. This is like the Murphy's Law season for Cleveland State. Whatever wrong can happen has happened. And you want to know the sad part is, this is not the first time this has happened either in the history of Cleveland State basketball.
I don't know. I think everything for Cleveland State is about looking to the future It's okay to know that this conference tournament's going to be a wash. There are some good players. I think Waters,
Sure.
he's what is it, 2019? He's contracted through. That's worrying about when the coach is there. It's not up to me as a fan to worry about when the coach is done. So I always want to focus on the team itself. And if you focus on the team itself,
There's going to be a lot of tough. There's going to be and we've talked about this in previous podcasts. There'll be a lot of different discussions as it relates to recruiting and the roster and things along that line. So that's all pretty much. We'll probably in future episodes, and we've already talked about it a number of times. But I do want to but switching subjects, I do want to talk about Valpo and. Wow, that Wisconsin trip for Valpo an easy out at all. Milwaukee takes them to overtime, and Green Bay plays them tough. If not for Shane Hammock, and I was looking at that 3-pointer, and I'm like, man, they let you do that. And it's nothing but net on that one, man. Nothing but net on that.
The thing that bothers me about Shane Hammock is he's just like, I don't think he's that good. He basically exactly what he's going to do before he does it. He's the most predictable player, and for some reason, he's almost unstoppable. Like Alec Peters is just strong, consistent, but he can beat you in so many different ways. Every player they've got, it just feels to me to be very dynamic. And then Shane Hammock, he gets the ball and he has a sliver of an opening, and I know that he's going to drive it. And I know that he's tall enough that if he puts it on the floor, even somebody with a minor defensive strength can slap the ball away. And nobody ever does. And it bothered me all night Friday. And I saw the 3 today, and I'm just thinking, like, man, you have to have Faust. You can't put Faust on him because you don't expect him to be the guy to have the shot. And he goes ahead and makes
and again, that was, I don't know, I didn't even realize that was the play that was drawn up where Hammock was out, was the guy, the shooter. I mean, the play before it was Carter. And then Peters was all over the place today, for the Green Bay game.
Yeah, I think that Valpo's really. I think everything about them going into the tournament is about kind of locking things down and just taking it slow, making sure that you're not doing too much at this point. Like they do have so much talent. Now it's about making sure you play within that talent and just letting things fall where they may. Because if Valpo just plays their game, plays consistent, strong offense and consistent, strong defense, and then takes care of the ball. I mean, they are the basketball team that this year that if I am showing, if I'm showing some 8th graders, this is how to play as a team. That's a team I'm pointing to. I'm saying, look, they don't do much wrong, so I would just remind them, don't do too much. Going into this tournament, because you only have to win 2 games. They're going to be 2 very difficult games.
Sure.
I talked to several Valpo people this weekend, some Friday night, some Saturday night. I had talked to them in person. There were a lot of them are in Milwaukee, and I ran into a couple of them. And each of them said, they really worry about having both us and Green Bay on their side of the bracket. And this weekend was a pretty obvious show. It pretty obviously showed that both of these teams can beat Valpo.
Sure.
So I just think that they need to make sure that they're not in their own heads. Just play your game, and Valpo should win it all.
Yeah, I think one of the other things too that I took away from it is that they did have the ability to find a way to win. Because make no mistake that Wisconsin trip for anybody, and it's been that way since forever, Wisconsin trip, even the best of teams over the years have slipped up and lost one of those two games. Last year Cleveland State lost to Milwaukee, I think, last year during that trip. They went in, won the big game up in Green Bay, and then lost the game in Milwaukee. And so, that's to me, that's the mark of a good team. That's the mark of an excellent team. That you can go to that really trip that's a meat grinder anyway for any team, and they found a way to win. And they overcame the adversity and found a way to win both of those games.
Does Valpo is that 2 losses for Valpo in the conference season?
That's it. Yes, and both of them were. They do end 16-2. The only 2 losses were Wright State.
So that makes them, let's see, the 6th team since the new tournament, since Youngstown State, since we became the Horizon League.
Mm-hmm.
That's the 6th team. Butler did in 03.
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee did in 05. Butler did in 07. 07 or 08, I can't remember.
I think it was. Remember, they run. I'm trying to remember. Did they run which? I think it was 2010. Didn't they run the table then?
Yeah, I knew 2010 was one of them, and then Green Bay in 2014, and all 5 of those teams, and now Valpo are the only 6 teams that have lost 2 or fewer games in the conference regular season, and 4 of those 5 won games in the NCAA tournament.
Okay.
Butler won 3 and Milwaukee went to the Sweet 16 in theirs. In fact, it wasn't Butler. Butler didn't win in 07. It was the year that they lost in the first round. So I can't remember if it was 07 or 08. It wasn't 09 because it wasn't right after, but I believe it was 08 because it was the year they went to the Sweet 16 one of those years, and one was the other one. So 3 of the 5 teams had won in the NCAA tournament at least a game, and then there was Green Bay in 2014. And I have no problem continuing to go back and talk about that 2014 tournament with Green Bay.
And I wonder why that is.
God, that was so.
Oh, wait! Don't say. Yeah, well, Jesus, Cleveland State didn't exactly set the world on fire on that one either. They lost to Wright State, and back to let's twist the knife in a little bit more. That was the year that they still had the Cleveland State still roster. Anton Grady, Trey Lewis, and Bryn Forbes were all on that roster. So.
I think Gary Waters learned a pretty important lesson this offseason in that you want to make sure now academics are starting to come into play. I know that we know that Horizon League coaches from talking to coaches that have come in our conference, have been in our conference. I talked to a few of them, and I know that some high major coaches have told me that what some high majors will do is what they're now doing with this 5th-year transfer rule is they're keeping tabs on players who are juniors and eligibility wise, and they are talking to the AAU coaches and they're talking to the high school coaches, and they're finding out who's going to graduate early, who's going to graduate either in the May of their junior year or in the summer, and then they recruit them through the coaches, and they're recruiting them through the coaches, and that's how some of these kids are getting moved elsewhere. Somebody has told a lot of the Horizon League coaches that, because I've heard it from about 4 or 5 of them 4 or 5 coaches in the conference. I'm not talking about my own school. I never talk about what our coaches tell me. So I've heard from coaches that's what high major coaches are doing now. They're keeping tabs. They're recruiting through the AAU and high school coaches. So I think what Gary can do.
Oh, well, yeah, that's for damn sure, because that's exactly what happened at that's especially what happened with Cleveland State, because ask anybody around, and think about it for a second. When Trey Lewis made his announcement,
Yeah.
that he did it at Garfield Heights High School, where he played basketball, where he played his high school basketball, and his coach Sonny Johnson, by amazing coincidence, who spent his first 2 years as a Cleveland State basketball player, I might add, before he transferred to Ohio U, was his high school coach. So that makes perfect sense to me. So that it's not always the case, but it's probably, it sounds more the trend now than it was before.
For a long time, what a lot of the kids would do is they would take classes. They would do the spring semester. They would do the fall and spring semesters, and then they would do some summer classes, because if you do the summer classes, then you get the stipend for food, etc.
Sure.
During the season or during the summer. So they would play so they could get they would go to class, they could get their money, they'd be staying on campus anyway for a lot of the times. So like at Milwaukee, we have 3 summer sessions. There's a June session, a late May, June session, a July session, and an August session. And usually, you get the kids that would come, and they come and take like 1 or 2 of the sessions, and take 9 credits.
Mm-hmm.
We get a lot of kids who would graduate, as juniors, and then they would get their first year of their masters paid for this through their scholarship. And
sure.
now I think a lot of the coaches, from who I talk to, and I'm sure that fans around the conference who talk to their coaches, and media people who talk to their coaches, I think a lot of them are starting to make sure that the players are not 100% there for graduation in time, because this fifth-year transfer rule is just it was a good idea when it started, and now it's starting to really hurt us as mid-majors. It's not good, because and remember, this is a guy who's I'm speaking from the place where we've only had one player with a fifth-year transfer, and it was a guy who came here. We have not even had a player transfer out. Transfer come in. That was Malcolm Moore, who came in from UTEP, and he was told that he wasn't going to play his senior year of eligibility. So it wasn't like we took somebody who was gonna be like a starter at some lesser school.
Well, that's what happened with isn't that what happened with Jay Harris, who formerly of Valpo, and then he ended up at UIC for his last year?
I think Jay Harris. Jay Harris has transferred so many times that it's hard to even pay attention.
I stopped kind of keeping tabs on where he was, and then I realized. Then I look up one day. I'm like, hey, wasn't he on Valpo?
Right, exactly. Like all of a sudden, Jay Harris is like at UIC. Like, didn't he? And he went somewhere in between the two. The guy's just.
I think he did. Yeah, I can't remember where to save my life, but yeah, he went somewhere, and then.
I want to say it was like Eastern Illinois or Western Illinois, or
something like that. It was it was a smaller school that he did that at, and then
we just gotta watch out with these kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of it's one of those things where, and I think it affected Cleveland State for the fact that you had a team that has historically been built in the Gary Waters era on high major transfers. I mean, his first 2 or 3 years, you had Cedric Jackson, who was a transfer from St. John's, George Tandy, who was a transfer from, I think, Western Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, Chris Moore, UC Santa Barbara. Transfers that way. So, and it's not something that it's something that, and over the years, Gary Waters prided himself on you didn't come in to sign with us now, but if you've changed your mind, you get homesick, come back, we'll bring you back with open arms.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, and it's worked out, up until very recently, it's worked out pretty well. Up until, again, the Murphy's Law season, where everything that could have possibly went wrong. And in Anton Grady's case, obviously, it was a little different because he was a medical red shirt because he blew out his knee in his sophomore year. So you probably aren't having that conversation as it relates to him if that's not the case. But that's a whole other ball of wax, and there's not really a whole lot you could do about it. I mean, and I'm looking at it from a standpoint of you look at the transfers, the 5th-year transfer rule. Cleveland State, I don't think has ever really had, a 5th-year transfer per se. But I do know that I'm sure that if he had a 5th-year transfer come approach him, he wouldn't say no. We've had the hardship waivers, the ones that actually did go away after Brent Forbes, but we've had the hardship waivers too. So it cuts both ways. And it's sometimes been to the benefit, sometimes to the detriment. Cleveland State just looks like the poster child for it this year, except to me, it's just a convergence of everything that could possibly have ever gone wrong that has gone wrong. And man, it seems to me we have talked for somebody who doesn't want to talk about these transfers. I've talked a lot about these damn things.
Has an enormous impact on the HoriZone League because if those 3 guys are there, in addition to Rob Edwards and DeMonte Flanagan, you're talking
They're still losing to Valpo in the race. I'm telling you that right now.
That's not what I'm saying. But I mean, where is Cleveland State in the RPI right now?
Oh God, I don't even know. I'm almost afraid to look, to tell you the truth.
The last time I saw it was like 326.
I'm sorry, that low? Holy crap!
I think it might have been, or maybe I'm thinking of 246.
It's not great.
It's bottom half at least. It might be bottom quarter, and that's not the RPI if those guys are all still at Cleveland State. So it's a matter of figuring out how to make it so everybody has. So making sure that you hold on to your guy.
Let's be honest here. If the NCAA has never been terribly accommodating to Cleveland State over its history anyway. So I'm a little skeptical that they'd actually do something to help them. So let's just kind of move on from that.
Well, the funny thing is that Cleveland State's legacy is probably the old adage that, Ohio State was cheating so much the NCAA got
Kentucky. Yeah, Jerry Tarkanian said that, by the way. The NCAA, his quote was, and I'm sure I'm paraphrasing, the NCAA was so mad at Kentucky they put Cleveland State on probation for 2 more years.
It's BS. It sucks. It's not good, but I think that Waters is still a smart coach, and I do think that I think he sees this as a retirement gig. I do think his plan is to. I don't think the guy's going to stop trying as the coach.
Oh no, and it's and the funny and having and it's an interesting dynamic because Cleveland State has been in this situation before where you've got an older coach. It depends on what they look, what it looks like. Gary's pissed. He's been pissed off since the middle of the season, and I've seen him angrier this year than I've ever. Funny. I think one of the broadcasts and one of the announcers made a joke. I saw Gary Waters smile in 1987. That's how mad he's been all year. So, and just the way he's been talking about this roster, this team right now, tells me so much that he's not having a great year. He's having a crappy year. The worst year that Cleveland State has seen in the Gary Waters era, probably worst team I've seen in more than a decade. Last time I've seen a team this bad was Mike Garland. Yes, the Mike Garland era. Those are. So it's got to be a point where he'll need the right to ship, and and it's not going to be a matter. It's this year is a wash. They're probably going to I don't want to say they're going to lose to Green Bay on Saturday. I don't have a lot of confidence in the world for it because, again, between Carrington Love and Jordan Faust and, crud, who killed him in Cleveland? The one kid who kept hitting threes, and Gary Waters even said we didn't game plan for the guy, and they killed him.
Lots. I think it was Turner.
Yeah, so
game for them against you guys.
Yep. Yeah, and at the post game, he's like, "We didn't game plan for him." Like, oh my god, really? That's not something that you really want to verbalize during a post game press conference.
Well, yeah, but the Turner Botts is this kid for Green Bay who's, he's pretty much a shooter. Like, he's not mad. Yeah, and he does a couple more things, but he's pretty much just a shooter. And he really wasn't that much of a good one until the last, 10 or 12 games, where all of a sudden he's kind of on a bit. And, good for him. It's good to see Green Bay get another, third.
Yeah. And actually, you could probably point to the Cleveland State game where he turned it around and started, lighting it up because he torched the Vikings. He definitely torched the Vikings. But yes. So
I'm just trying to.
So that's the
thing's right.
Yeah,
you guys.
That's gonna be that's the 4-9 seed. 3-10 is we've talked a little bit about from Wright State and UIC, and that again that's gonna be not an easy out. So you're
So then we're on
Wisconsin. Yes, so Wisconsin, you are the 5 seed, I believe.
Wisconsin's in the Big Ten. We're Milwaukee.
No, crap. Yes, it is. Damn it. Milwaukee. Damn it, Milwaukee. Oh, we seem to have misplaced Jimmy. I'm pretty sure that wasn't supposed to happen. I guess I insulted him with my confusion between Wisconsin and Wisconsin and Milwaukee. See, this is the problem. Every time I turn around, I'm just doing this stupid thing with missing branding, and now I'm just completely screwing the pooch on this one. So hopefully he comes back, because if he doesn't, then I'm going to be flying solo for the rest of this podcast, and I'm not sure if anybody's going to like that very much. So, but as we talked about, the 5th seed. That's why I mentioned this 5th seed, as I believed it to be. So, so the 5th seed is going to be Milwaukee, correct?
Yes.
And you get to play the 8th seed, which is?
Northern Kentucky.
Right? Wait. Yes, it is, because Youngstown had secured the 7th seed, already. So,
how didn't they tie in the standings?
What's that now?
They tied in the standings, did they not?
I believe
so. Youngstown must have swept them.
Kind of what happened there, because but I'm not sure. Yeah, but for whatever reason, and I can't remember to save my life why that happened, but Youngstown, and they clinched it on Saturday, so I don't know, because they had lost because did they beat Northern Kentucky on Saturday?
I think not sure.
Man,
I had a very busy day.
This is where you get the best information, Horizon League fans. I knew
going into yesterday that they were tied at 5-8.
Yeah, but
5-12 or something like that.
Something like that, but yeah, Milwaukee gets Northern Kentucky, and so that's gonna be an interesting matchup there, because
it is, and the problem is for Milwaukee is that a competent big man gives us problems, and a 3-point shooter gives us problems. So Cole Murray will give us problems, and Jalen Billups will give us problems, just like they did at Northern Kentucky. That was part of it.
And Drew McDonald will annoy you as he's annoyed you all year. So
yeah, he'll annoy us because he won't. The kid will throw 1,000 elbows and he'll get called for 3 fouls, and yeah, I'm just this.
What I find interesting is that this is the same. What I find interesting is this is the same group that went into Cleveland on Thursday night and lost. They a shorthanded Cleveland State team, I might add, and they lost. So
yeah,
obviously they can be beaten, and Milwaukee has had no problem with that in the past. So I mean, I don't think they're gonna this season. So I don't think they're gonna have too many issues in the future. That leaves the 6-7 matchup, which is gonna be Detroit and Youngstown.
Which good for them. Detroit should win that one unless Paris Bass decides it's on him to start winning every game in the tournament, and he decides to chuck up 30 shots, which doesn't sound like like the craziest thing in the world. But if the game runs through Sideshow Bob Marley, Detroit's gonna win. If it runs through Paris Bass, they're gonna lose. That's my opinion. Just my
wait. Whoa! Back up the truck a little bit. Sideshow Bob
Marley. You know who I'm talking about.
In the hell? Yeah, but where the hell did you come up with that?
It was on Twitter like a couple weeks ago. I was watching the game, and he was just having a hell of a game against us. It was when they were just throttling us. And Detroit beat us by 14 there. The fun fact, we've beaten 2 Big Ten teams. We've took Valpo to overtime. We've come close with Murray State, with Duquesne. We've let's see, what else have we done? We've got a bunch of we lost by 8 at Notre Dame. We lost by 12 at Valpo, and our biggest loss of the year is at Detroit. Of all year long, the biggest loss we've had all year was at Detroit by 14. They have a couple really, really, really talented players. Anton Wilson is really good. Anton Wilson's really good. I say Sideshow Bob Marley because I came up with it during the game because I can never remember his actual name. And I watched most of his game yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, his name, I want to say it's Chris Jenkins. Chris Jenkins.
Yes, it's Chris Jenkins. Yes.
And the funny thing is, I tweeted the sideshow when I tweeted the Sideshow Bob Marley thing. Somebody had he retweeted and liked it on Twitter, so I guess he really likes. He really likes the nickname, but it works. It's just really funny because his haircut he's got the Sideshow Bob haircut, but he's a black guy, so it's Sideshow Bob Marley. It's just it's a.
At least he's a good sport about it. So
I just
so
I'm not very good at coming up with nicknames. Is the long and short of that.
So that's Detroit again. It's just one of those years. I mean, they have all of that there.
It's one of what
years? Only muster
Ray McCallum tenure. They've always had talent.
One of those eras, then, okay? One of those eras where,
I don't know. I mean, Watson really didn't do a whole lot of it in the end. I mean, 2004-05, in that 05 tournament, they almost beat us in the title game. And they didn't. And, the best for us, because we went to the Sweet 16 on it, but they were like I think they were like a 6 seed or something in that tournament. So it wasn't like they were, they were like the by far number 2 of the conference. It really hasn't been since the 90s, since like Willie Green has Detroit really been all that great.
Willie Green and Rashad Phillips, yeah.
Yeah, Detroit's just it's. I don't know what I don't know if the plan is to move on from Ray McCallum after the year. I've heard grumblings of it. I'm sure Carrick Jones knows more than we do, but it's just it's the same thing this year. They have a lot of really talented pieces. They've got a lot of highly rated recruits, and they don't do much with them. They went to the one NCAA tournament because, it just so happened that the coach had his kid on the team. That's everything. If Ray McCallum Jr. was not, the son of Ray McCallum Sr., Detroit doesn't have that tournament there. They just
By the
don't
way,
win. Yeah.
I do want to back up a little bit. Yes, Youngstown State did in fact beat Northern Kentucky.
Okay, so that's why we're playing instead of Youngstown. Yeah, I'm fine with that because I know it's very difficult. It's extremely difficult to beat a team 3 times in one season. It has happened plenty of times.
But I know you had your heart. But Jimmy, I know you had your heart set on Milwaukee vanquishing Youngstown State this year.
I want nothing to do with Youngstown State. I want nothing to do with them in this conference. I honestly believe that if Youngstown State and Northern Kentucky, which granted they're the 7 and 8 now, they're 9 and 10, but Northern Kentucky is tied to Youngstown State because I felt like this offseason, if we had booted Youngstown State and kept it at 8 instead of adding Northern Kentucky, we'd only have had 2 RPI anchors, and I think for a team like Milwaukee, this year it doesn't matter. Because would we have had a higher RPI? Sure, but it wouldn't have made a difference for us in getting like an NIT or an NCAA bid because we don't have a resume for either. No. But for Valpo, a team that is on the bubble as an at-large at best right now, they had 4 games that were against RPI anchors that didn't have to happen. That could have been replaced with non-conference games against either non-D1s that wouldn't hurt their RPI or against strong mid-majors or maybe even going into a high major and maybe getting a victory. You don't know what they could have done with those 4 games. So I'd like to think that Valpo would have gotten, maybe a game against like Illinois or something, and well, that wouldn't be Illinois because Illinois likes to back out of games. But Valpo would have gotten,
and
they could have gotten.
Illinois was having some real problems this year anyway, so that actually would have been kind of an RPI loser for them because Illinois is not that good this year.
I was thinking of a school that's not afraid of bringing in a strong mid major into their gym, like say like a Michigan State. Would Valpo have beaten Michigan State? I don't know because. Conventional wisdom would say, well, Michigan State's a pretty darn good team. They're not the number 1 team in the country anymore, but they would have been when they played them. And, Valpo's this, just a Horizon League team. But then again, Oakland took them to overtime, and Valpo is quite obviously better than Oakland. So who knows? Maybe Valpo would have won that game or against, a similar team. So you never know. Who's gonna let you play, and who you could have gotten with those 4 games on the schedule. But frankly, we have way too many anchors for the RPI. And one fan said on Twitter, well, every conference has some teams that'll drop the RPI. I said yes, but not 40% of the conference. The Horizon League's got a problem with where now because Cleveland State is getting this barren wasteland, and hope that you guys can get out of it quick.
Thanks.
I'm just saying it doesn't look.
I think it doesn't, and I mean it's one of the. you I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to find a silver lining anywhere in the dark clouds of Cleveland at the moment. So,
Bob Edwards, Monte Flanagan will be
that's
joined.
what happens.
They'll be joined in 2 years by a couple good JUCOs, and when they're seniors, they'll have a pretty darn good team. But you're still talking about years from now. And then
that said, too, and again, they do have another transfer coming in next year, Bobby Word, and you know what? He can actually score. So hopefully the scoring problem that they've had all year is sort of alleviated by that. Not to mention, as you mentioned, adding in a JUCO point guard, which really does right now sound like a Gary Waters like number one priority. He doesn't have a point guard. He's mentioned it many, many times. We all agree with him. Go get him, Gary. Yeah. So as soon as that point guard kind of materializes itself, and I think it will very soon. That's kind of what and I'm okay with that. I mean, I figure that, for a guy who prides himself on point guard play as Gary Waters does, man, he is, you see why he's point guard.
Yeah. In any one team, Cleveland State's one. UIC is it gets worse before it gets better plan. The last I checked, they were 348 out of 351 teams in the RPI.
At the same time, you have a hell of a foundation to build on with them, at least.
With Northern Kentucky, it's you have some good players, but how long is it?
And again, you have better play. And from what it sounds like, they have better players coming in too. I think with the Northern Kentucky, I think it's just going to be a matter of them once they get to the point where they are going to be fully eligible. They're going to go. They're going to put. I think they're going to be. I think we have objectively agreed that they are long run a good addition to this league. I think we disagree on the timing of it. I think they're going to get better sooner than you think they are, but in the long run, they're not going to be, they're not going to be the anchor. And not to mention the fact they didn't even finish in last place this year. So I know low bar, but still, I mean, that's a pretty damn good point. That's a pretty good damn good starting point where you're competing with three teams that have been in the league for a while, and you're able to, get to the last game of the season and still be, not in the, you're still kind of in the bottom, but you're doing a lot better than a lot of people thought you were going to do.
5 victories in the conference season is better than most people thought that Northern Kentucky was going to get in year one, and that's okay. That's
right, because right, because we all suck at scouting them. So sorry, Northern Kentucky.
It's not much worse than Valpo did in their first year. I believe Valpo was 7-11 back in 2007-08. So it's not.
And Valpo and Northern Kentucky also is, once again, Northern Kentucky happens to suffer from the problem of, they're still transitioning from Division II. So it's not one of those, they're in their final year of that transitional tag. So Valpo was around forever. And so
that's almost over.
But
Northern Kentucky will be, if they get the right coach, and Brandon might be the guy, but if they get the right coach, they will be able to turn that thing up. I mean, they will be able to light the world on fire with those facilities, and they can own everybody in the Cincinnati area on their side of the river. I mean, that says the makings of a great program. But
and keep in mind, and again, and I mentioned this in a couple of previous episodes, that they do. Northern Kentucky, even at a Division II level, had a basketball tradition. They were an excellent Division II team. So, and as you mentioned before, they did better. They gone to the lengths that not even Greg Campy up in Oakland when they were in Division II went to. So there's a lot of upside in Northern Kentucky. And not to mention the fact that Kentucky, by its very nature, is a basketball crazy state anyway. So, and to be where they are in northern, to be where they are, there's definitely going to be a lot of opportunities there for them.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Northern Kentucky. I think that they'll be great. I had heard, I was talking with a fan, and I won't say who it is, on Twitter the other day in a private message, and he brought up a really good point. He really felt like Northern Kentucky was brought in maybe just a year too early, and I do feel like that
And we
definitely
talked
does.
about, and now we talked about this now, and we talked about this a little bit ourselves too. So it's not like, this is kind of pretty well covered territory for us as well. But I mean, I'm okay with the 1 year jumping the gun on them just because of their upside. I know this year was kind of a crap sandwich as it relates to them being not being eligible for the tournament and whatnot, but I'll take it for them.
It's been so long since it's been a long time since we've only had one team in the top 100 of the RPI, and that has everything to do with how this entire conference has just dropped the ball considerably overall. It's I was much higher on this conference at the beginning of the conference season and at the beginning of the season than I am today. And
of course, you're also not the idiot who thought Cleveland State was going to finish fifth in the conference. So at least you have that going for you.
Well, I don't know. Milwaukee definitely didn't do as well as I was hoping. I mean, there's so many games. I mean, we've had 3 losses by more than 4 points. So obviously, our entire season has been of just close game after close game after close game, and it's taken a toll. I think Jordan Johnson's playing. We today during the game, Jordan Johnson had a bunch of turnovers, and everybody's like, "Wow, it looks so tired. Like he's not having." He's just his body's starting to break down or something, and he comes out with it's like 5 minutes left in the game, and I had no idea until at the end of it when Bob Brainerd, the public address announcer in the arena, as I'm walking out, he's like, "Oh, and by the way, Jordan Johnson broke the school record for assists in a game today with 15." I was like, "Wait a second, oh, did he really do that?" Like I just, and it's the long season takes a toll, and I feel for Valpo because
and yet today against UIC, he gets 15 assists.
yeah, I really feel for Valpo is what I want. What my whole point is that because Valpo should be a team that should be competing for an at-large bid, and unless like some crazy things happen, I don't think they're going to get it if they do lose in the Horizon League tournament. They would have to lose on a buzzer beater in the Horizon League championship game anyways if they had a shot. And it's so unfortunate because it's such a great team. So I'm to this point where as a fan, I think of our budgets. Youngstown State, Green Bay, they have they have the smallest budgets of the conference. They're around Green Bay's budget is around $8 million for their athletics budget. UIC is up to $20 million, which is incredible that they're willing to spend that kind of money to do that to get back up there, and I'm really happy for that. But I think about these 10 schools where.
And to your point, now I want to back up a little bit before because I know where you're going with this. But this is, it seems that this conference has had this issue before, and it happened during the 2001-2002 season because, as you know, Butler,
right.
they ran into the same problem. Where now a little different problem because they lost in the first round of the conference tournament, and this was before they changed the format around, so that sort of thing wasn't going to happen ever again. But They just didn't, and that was impressively a year where I believe they had beaten, because they had played a bunch of teams in Indiana. A few of those Indiana schools did end up going into the NCAA tournament, and here's Butler, who did not get in, and they ended up in the NIT. And I think that was the year of the now infamous UIC Loyola championship game in Cleveland.
Yeah.
In Cleveland. The now infamous UIC Loyola game in Cleveland.
Watch what happens if Green Bay goes through to the title game and they end up playing, say, who's say if somehow Youngstown State comes out the other side and it's Green Bay Youngstown State, and watch how many people show up for that title game. I think it was 6-7.
I think I watched that just based off of morbid curiosity, actually.
UIC and Loyola were like the 6 and 7 seeds when they went to the championship games.
They were.
So obviously, you wouldn't have the 6 and 7 now since they're playing each other, but you could, say you have this just two lower seeds playing each other in Detroit, and then all of a sudden it's boom! It's ridiculous. Milwaukee. I'd like to think that we would have 1,000 people or 2,000 people travel to Detroit if we make the title game, but I'm also realistic. I know what the university will do. I know if we win Monday night, the university will put together some viewing party in the guest house on campus in the arena in the Union, and Tuesday night it'll be 150 people from here in going out to Detroit, because there was 150 people that went to Wright State back in 2014 when we won it, and it's they want to make it this destination tournament, but it's the title game is still on a Tuesday. It's easy for people to get off work Thursday through Sunday because you're already off Saturday, Sunday. A lot of people only work half days Friday or can get their stuff done on Friday. So really you're talking about traveling one day, that Thursday, and then get it going out there. And I mean, it wouldn't be as easy for me, but I'm a car salesman. So, my Fridays, Saturdays are my big day. So it's different for a guy like me than it would be for somebody else. So it's almost to the point where if we somehow don't end up with Detroit or Oakland in the title game, I think you're going to have a redux of what happened in Cleveland in 2002. And it's not that I think Valpo would bring people. I think Valpo is going to bring quite a few people. But when I say quite a few, I'm talking about 300. I think Valpo will have 300, maybe 400 for a title game. I don't think Valpo is going to send 2,000 people to that title game, and I don't think the people of Detroit are going to care. I think I know what this tournament's about, and I think you do too. I think what this is about Olympia showing over the next 5 years, them showing the Big Ten that they can host that championship tournament. This isn't about the Horizon League tournament. It's about getting the Big Ten tournament. And I abhor the whole idea, because the Horizon League had such a good thing going. We protected the top seeds. And while that was such a bad, so many schools hated the idea. I know the Loyola people despised it. I know that a lot. I know the Loyola people despised it. I know the Detroit people despised it. I know a lot of these schools didn't like it. I know the Oakland people came in and were like, "Why is this a thing?" But the fact of the matter is that when you protect the top seed, it's all about getting the best team for the conference in the NCAA tournament. That's what it's about, because it's about getting the team that gives you the best chance to win and raise the profile of the whole conference and raise some money, because an NCAA tournament unit is quite a lot of money. It's $1 million plus. It might be, I think it's reaching 1.5 this year. It's a lot of money, and we're about to, our money from Butler's tournament runs is about to start drying up, and it's time for us to recognize that we have, after next year, the Butler money's gone. So we need units. So we either need to get at-larges, which we're not getting because we have a conference that's 2 teams too big, and is dragging down the RPI. So we don't have, so our top team isn't as strong as they could be in the RPI. And now Lacrone in this conference have taken away the tournament setup that has protected the top seed, protected the number 2 seed, and set it up so that those teams go. 2003, Butler, from 2003 on. 2003 was the last year of the round robin, and then 2004 it became the top seed. Now, we hosted in 2003, even though Butler was the number 1 seed, we were the number 2 because it was our turn to host the round robin. And we ended up beating Butler in the title game, but they were thankfully they were strong enough to get in the tournament. They went to the Sweet 16. In 2005, we hosted that tournament, and Detroit was 1 Brandon Cotton runner away from beating us in the title game. And if that shot had fallen, we were not set up to be an at-large team in 2005. Our Sweet 16 wouldn't happen in 2006. If we could have lost and not won. And forever, Cleveland State is really the only team from 2009 to win in the NCAA tournament without being one of the protected teams. Butler. You think about it. Think about this. Butler in 2010 was Butler and in 2010 and 2011 they were protected. Mm-hmm. In 2010 they hosted and were protected. In 2010 we were in the semifinals. We lost to them on we were only down 3 with 45 seconds left, and Ricky Franklin missed a shot that would have put us at a tie game with 45 seconds left. Butler could have made a shot. We could have made a shot and won it at Hinkle Fieldhouse. That game was really close. They beat Wright State in the title game by a lot, but our game in the semifinals was really close. If Butler had to go to Detroit and play on a neutral court in 2010, they could have lost. And while they still could have gotten in as an at-large in 2010, they would not have had quite as good a seed because they didn't win the conference title game. And then in the next season, 2010-11, when us and you guys and Butler tied, we all tied for the championship, for the regular season title, but you guys got stuck with the 3 seed. Butler was protected as a 2. And as much as Waters belly ached, the fact of the matter is that Butler was protected with that 2 seed, so they were protected, got the win in the semifinals, and beat us up in the title game, and they went to the Final Four. Butler, had they not won that tournament, would not have even gone to the NCAA tournament that year, based on their resume. But they were protected, and that was a Final Four. That was a national title game appearance for us for the 2nd year in a row. And I don't think the second one definitely would not have happened. The first one may have not happened because they would have had a lower seed, and they wouldn't have been protected. It's about protecting the top seeds. And for a team from 3 to 10, we've done it. You've done it in 2009, and Detroit did it the year they beat Valpo. Those 3 teams, I really strongly felt that by the end of the year, those were the best 3 teams. Those are the best teams in each year. In 2009, I really felt like Cleveland State, running into March, was the best team. Was it 2013 or 2012? I really felt like Detroit really went into that NCAA. They went into Valpo and they did it, and it's because and we went into Green Bay and beat them, and Wright State and beat them, and it's about putting the best team in the conference in the NCAA tournament. So if a lower seed can overcome those crazy odds, and then still, and then win the whole thing, then they've proven that they're the best team because they can overcome all of that. Green Bay was a very good team, but you can't snap your fingers and make an injury go away. The fact of the matter is that Alec Brown had a shoulder injury that was hampering him, and Kiefer Sykes got hurt in the semifinals against us. And so many people in Green Bay will say, "Well, we were the better team." Obviously, you're the better team, but you weren't at full strength. Milwaukee was better than your team that was hurting. And that's okay. Full strength Green Bay, I think, wins that game against us, and then wins on Tuesday, and then maybe just maybe wins in the NCAA tournament. But, excuse me, the fact of the matter is that we beat them because they were hampered, so they wouldn't have won in the NCAA tournament anyways. They got creamed in the NIT because I think Sykes didn't even play. And if Sykes couldn't play, he wouldn't have been able to play in the NCAA tournament in any case. So this conference tournament that was Lacrone's legacy, it's almost like the guy's legacy shopping. Trying to say that he's finally built the HoriZone League into a conference that can support a neutral site tournament. That's the goal. But it's almost like he was legacy shopping, but he shouldn't have been shopping because he already had it. That double bye top seed hosted HoriZone League tournament was a revolution in college sports, and college basketball. That and the HoriZone League network, conferences across the country looked at them as models, and we abandoned it. And I don't think people understand the implications if Valpo loses in this tournament when they've only lost 2 conference games. I don't think people understand the implications from Valpo's point of view for the rest of us looking at Valpo as a school that since Butler has been the standard bearer for a few years. And Bryce Drew is not leaving that school for just any job. Bryce Drew has turned down Mississippi State. He's turned down Iowa State. He's turned down some pretty big jobs. I mean, I had heard a rumor that Iowa State was going to throw $2 million a year at him. I don't know what the exact number was, but I know that he's gotten a lot of schools that have told him they'll pay him a lot more money, and he stayed. And I honestly believe because the guy owns the campus. I mean, it's his school, and I'm sure he wants to win that NCAA tournament there before he moves on. If he ever decides to move on. But I don't mean to keep rambling on, but what I'm saying is I don't think people understand the implications.
It's interesting you mentioned all of this because we had it, and I do remember us having a conversation about this in episodes past about kind of your thoughts on this tournament as a whole. Now, mind you, of course, this was before the entire season played out, and it has become what it has become. This is going to wrap up the first episode. Stay tuned. Later on this week, we're going to have part 2 of this because we went way over on the second part of this. You can't miss that. So we're going to catch you. You're going to get this next episode. It's going to be coming up this week. Bonus episode for you guys. So be sure to stop. forlights.fm. Be sure to subscribe to it. Do not miss it.
Thanks, guys, for listening.
And we'll catch you then. Yep.